feel like you don't really see many big budget original IP sci-fi films nowadays, unless you're Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. These films don't really come that often. The high risk of films that, like The Creator, have never really worth it to Hollywood. And it is a real big shame, but that's just how the world works. As films like this are a really brilliant experience, especially when you're watching these in like a big IMAX screen. So this is directed by the guy who did both Rogue One and then that 2014 Godzilla reboot. So Gareth Edwards. I do quite like him as a director, but both these films have exactly the same positives and negatives as The Creator. So the first real draw for me towards this film was the presentation. Kind of from the trailers you can tell that the main focus on this film is going to be those technical visual aspects and all that stuff around it. And it is, for the most part, visually stunning. Those special effects here are absolutely excellent. There isn't really any, I wouldn't say there's any at all actually like dodgy looking effects or anything that takes you out of the film. All the AI, the robots, the weapons, all the, I guess they're ships or jets, stuff like that. It all looks fantastic, completely fantastic. They built a really, really great world here. I think that's what one of the biggest positives is the world building. I mean, everything around these characters in terms of background and presentation and little bits of details you see here and there are all really, really fantastic. And it's definitely helped by a lot of these big action set pieces as well. These huge, they have a lot of really huge open spaces in this film. Even the underground facility they visit, parts of it are just widely open, massive, and they use these sets very effectively in terms of the action. There's one scene where they've got these humans attacking this essentially little mini AI stronghold. They just roll through these huge fucking tanks, absolutely start blowing things to bits, and it's a lot of wide shots of everything they're showing you, and it looks brilliant. Also, we'll say I do quite like mainly all the performances. There's a few iffy ones here and there. Child actors, never going to be great. But I think for me, John David Washington, pretty great. Comparatively to his performance in something like Tenet, similar, not exactly similar film, but definitely the same genre. Here he has much more of a presence, more charisma than he did in Tenet, because for all of Tenet's flaws, one of them was the fact that John David Washington was an extremely bland character. And even there's actually some quite good jokes he has, surprisingly funny at times. I wasn't expecting that at all, so that's good. But with all these brilliant effects, incredible presentation, it's really not complemented well by its story. It's the biggest problem this film has. I mean, it's very, say, cliche at times, bland as well, and the story itself is just pretty basic and predictable. It seems to force a lot of emotion onto you as well. There's so many scenes spent of the characters crying. You don't feel anything. You really have no real connection to any people. You don't really care too much. And there's just little really weird things. They have this huge flying fortress, and it's called Nomad, in the sky that essentially is just like a nuke launcher, pretty much. It just constantly, all its missiles seem to be just nukes, which in itself is a very weird idea. Especially if I think they've had it for around over 10 years. They've been using this thing, and all it's been doing is firing nukes the whole time. But it seems not only just excessive, but a terrible idea in terms of the planet's ecosystem, and how you talk about global warming, and a big fuck off spaceship that fires nukes is going to increase that tenfold, surely. It's obviously throughout the film it fires these nukes one by one, essentially, and that's on the smallest beaches and small little villages. It just nukes them, and then it only then at the end of the film decides that it doesn't need to do it one by one, and it could in fact just bulk fire there's about 10-20 nukes. It just pop 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 pop, and it hasn't done that at all. for the entirety of like 10 years. Like this huge war that was caused by apparent AI nuking of LA could have been ended very quickly once this thing was built, if it can literally just bulk fire nuclear bombs anywhere on the planet. And it only ever decides to do that at the end of the film. You know, it's little things. I mean, like, even like a random mention of the LA being nuked, there's like one little bit of dialogue where it's like, oh, actually, it wasn't the AI's rebelling, it was actually a human error. Okay, sorry? And it's mentioned once in one bit of dialogue. Isn't that like, that's huge? That's like that should be like a major plot point. That like changes everything, and it's just mentioned once and then never again. Like, okay, like even just like nuking LA. Like, who gives a shit if LA's been nuked anyway? It's a fucking awful place. But then it wasn't even like AI doing it anyway. It was a human error. It's so minor, such a minor bit of dialogue that really should be like a huge catalyst for this film, and it's completely ignored. What the fuck? But you know, it's a fine film for me. It has its moments that are really enjoyable, really entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's, if you get a kick out of really great presentation, brilliant effects, like I do, and great cinematography, then you're going to enjoy it. But when you look deeper into the plot, into the story, it's nothing really that special in terms of that aspect. So it is what it is. Definitely worth a watch though. And this film for me gets a 3 out of 5. Have a good one.